Hey, Phil Southerland here, CEO, founder of Supersapiens, and honored to be here with Brad on the Physical Performance Show.
Phil Southerland, welcome to the Physical Performance Show.
Hey, Brad, it's great to be here. How are you tonight?
Going well. Just watched the first installment of the Commonwealth Games triathlon, the men's race, and sandwiched between the men's and the women's is a chat with your fine self, founder of Supersapiens. Could Friday night get any better?
It's Friday morning here, but I think this is going to make for the great start for the final day of the week, and it can go into the weekend in grand style.
Grand style. Well, talking about grand style, Supersapiens, 3.5 years in to the life cycle of the company and product. My gosh, this is an endurance-based podcast, the Physical Performance Show. Coaches, practitioners, and athletes, many will have seen the Supersapiens device. Perhaps not a lot will have still yet been able to utilize it. Shall we start with the why behind the what, Phil? What was the why behind the what here?
I want to help athletes achieve their goals, right? And they're for so long. People have done the work. They've had the disciplined diet. They followed their coach's program, and they show up to race day knowing they can succeed that day, and something goes wrong, and they have no idea why. And I just know the devastating consequences that has on one's psyche and their confidence going into the next week. And more often than not, those mistakes, they were no fault of the athlete. They were no fault of the coach. They were just, the body reacts differently on race day than it does during training. And they had fueling problems. They had glucose problems. And, without visibility, you can't make adjustments to improve. And with Supersapiens, it's the first, real-time energy management system that can give athletes, and more importantly, give their coaches visibility to, how their body responds to efforts, to races, to adrenaline, and adapt, and create a personalized fueling strategy for each individual. Because when it comes to metabolism, we're all snowflakes. And, I've been an athlete for my entire life. I've had days where, I failed, and I know what that feels like. And I've had days where everything went right and I succeeded. And I just know that it's a game changer. So, look beyond, the athlete is like, I want to help athletes achieve their goals. I want to help coaches to help their athletes achieve their targets. And I think it's the athlete community, that has the power and, more importantly, the responsibility to get more people active. Health is wealth. And if each one of us, by achieving a goal, gets inspired to help someone else set their first goal, we can spread health to the community by getting more people active. And, that's kind of the driving force. The mission beyond, the product and the ecosystem is, the world needs help. And I know sport and exercise and activity can solve a lot of problems that we have in the world today.
Gosh, what a noble mission, Phil. Spread health to the community. I think it would be better for us to, as an athlete community, spread health than the last few years of spreading COVID. But all jokes aside, what a powerful mission. And if we go back a step, what is it in very simple terms that the Supersapiens device is measuring?
It measures real-time glucose. So, we've got at Supersapiens, we have the privilege of working with, Abbott laboratories. I first used their diabetes technology 17 years ago. And I know you said at the start that we're three years in, but we're really 17 years into the validation of this technology, the understanding of kind of what the data means and how to use the data to guide people to make better decisions. But we have the sensor which you put on, and it lasts for up to 14 days. It gives you minute by minute glucose, and then because we're the only Bluetooth sensor out there, we're able to do integrations and pair with things such as Garmin. We've got our own energy band, and in the coming weeks we'll send the data direct to Wahoo. And, while it's great to look at an app, I'm here to get people active. And so the real-time data during activity is truly the magic sauce of Supersapiens. And it's something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And it's been just such a awesome journey to see, our athletes, and how they perform after they figure out, how they need to fuel for themselves, not, 90 grams of carbs per hour or 60 grams carbs per hour, but what they need to eat and when they need to eat. And when you get that magic sauce right, it's amazing how fast you can go.
Gosh. I mean, you're only as good as you feel in, really. I'm a sports physiotherapist, and a big part of the recovery process is touching on people's caloric intake and their fueling. And endurance athletes, what a high caloric demand it is. And, Chris Froome, you've got some amazing ambassadors, athletes, the Tour de France peloton, the triathletes, the Norwegian train. It's really prominent. Chris Froome was one of the early adopters. There must be some great stories that have really been meaningful to yourself to see such big names in the sporting world adopt the technology and really put it out there for other people like Kristian Blummenfelts of the world, showing the triathlon community.
Yeah, I mean, look, when Chris got on, when I had my first intro call with Chris, and he's been on product for a year and 8 months now. And the first thing he said was, Phil, I wish this existed, in my prime. He said, I had so many bad days that I couldn't explain, and this solves everything. And then, while we're intended to help fueling for performance, Chris found the magic in weight loss. So he was able to use, the Supersapiens ecosystem to, fuel exactly what he needed to fuel, no more, and use it to lose weight or decide when to end an interval session or when to keep pushing because he still had gas in the tank. And I mean, man, to see his comeback and third place, on the Alpe d'Huez stage was, gave us all at Supersapiens a mass sense of pride. And then you look at, Wout van Aert, right? I mean, and Jumbo-Visma, and Jumbo was the first team that got on product, right? And Wout was one of the first 5 pro athletes to start using the sensor to see his dominance throughout the tour and see Jumbo finally achieve Project Yellow. One of our longest running sports scientific advisors, Asker Jukendrup, they solved a lot for what to do for Jumbo-Visma for precision fueling. And, Pogačar lost the tour, because of that, that one day that he lost 2 minutes, that's where everything shifted. And why? He ran out of gas and Jumbo still had gas in the tank. Really we came to market to prevent the bonk, right? That's what the impetus behind Supersapiens was, because the Tour de France is won or lost. And, I've been a cyclist my whole life, so I'll probably yield more towards cycling stories than I will towards, winning gold medal in the marathon with Kipchoge or winning gold medal in triathlon with Blummenfelt. But, it's a multi-million-dollar mistake when, if you lose the Tour de France because of fueling, not just for the athlete as an individual, but the team, the economic consequences of winning or not winning are pretty significant. But it wasn't, so we were like, wow, we'll prevent the bonk with live visibility. But then in the early testing phases, we put a woman who was training for a third triathlon, a mother of 2, full-time job, but still manages like all the crazy triathletes to train 20, 25 hours per week. And lo and behold, she failed in her first two Ironman. She had 11-hour targets and she ended up in 14-hour time. She bonked miserably in the run. And she didn't know why. And so we put a sensor on her 4 days before her third Ironman. And we found that she was hypoglycemic all the time. So she just had really low glucose, i.e. her reserves were extremely low. So we said to Jane, double your carbohydrate intake, just eat as much carbs as you can. She did for the next 3 days leading up to the race, stabilize her glucose, at a reasonable level, and then went on to set a PR by over 3 hours. And she said she felt better in the run on the Ironman than she had felt on any runs and half Ironmans in the past. And she accredited fueling. And that's when it hit us that, wow, this is more than just during activity. This is, we can help people show up to their events primed and ready to be the best of themselves. And, as well as I do, that there's no miracles in sport. At the end of the day, the only person we compete against is ourselves, right? It's, if you do the best you can on race day and you cross the finish line knowing that, I did what I could do, then you're happy. And I'd rather see more happy faces across the finish lines. And, that's something we can now control for. And it's, for me, is incredibly exciting. And the coaching community who's embraced this tremendously, they're really the ones that are going to help crack the code and spread this to the masses, because it's coaches who are going to gamify it for the individuals. And it's been a privilege and honor to work with some of the best coaches in the world as we, try to make this a mainstream product for the sporting world.
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction there, Phil, that the awareness grew around the fact that this wasn't just about showing up to prevent the bonk. It was then also about helping athletes be primed to show up as their best and ready selves.
Yep.
And then, Phil, you phase it, prime, perform, recover. One of the interesting things I just picked up there was it can be relatively quick turnarounds in improving how someone shows up to the start line. Even just the example of Jane, just a few days. Is there a desirable or ideal time frame that people, athletes, coaches might utilize the technology, the sensor, before they take to their a race of the year or the season?
I guess there's two ways to think of that. One, this is not a magic puck that you put on and all of a sudden you go faster. Like it's you have to learn, right? I've had diabetes for 40 years, and I still learn new things and get curveballs, with my glucose, when I don't expect them, right? And it's the same for people without diabetes, because there's 42 different variables scientifically proven to impact your blood glucose. It takes time. So in an ideal circumstance, I'd say 3 months before, maybe 5 months before you start learning, start doing an experiment, do a test, then it's just, you change one variable at a time. When do you eat breakfast? You start there. And then it's, what do you eat for breakfast? Is it enough carbohydrates, enough protein? How do you feel? What did it do for your glucose? Kipchoge's coaches, just observed the data for 2 months before they started doing any interventions. And then they would make one intervention at a time, analyze the results. Now, I know most of us don't have that luxury to have a team of sports scientists around you observing all your data, right? So one thing you could do is, if your race is this weekend, and you've never tried it before, put it on, and don't even worry about the numbers during the race, but look at it afterwards and review it with your coach. And what we found is, a lot of people will be able to correlate. I was having a bad moment in the race, and look, my glucose was low there. I was feeling really good, and my glucose was at 140. So you can then use that one race experience, take a break, and then as you start to train for the next one, take a more precision approach, and maybe your race experience can yield faster results in the training. So there's no magic bullet, but any time is a good time to start, because I promise to anyone out there that they're gonna get some surprises, and they will learn a lot. And what we've seen time and time again from those who stick with us is, personal records are broken and massive races are won.
And get some surprises, Phil, you mean in terms of their data?
Yeah, I mean, like, Anna van der Breggen, she used to eat, she used to always get shaky on the bike, right? After about 20 minutes into her rides. Well, lo and behold, she was eating a bowl of oatmeal about 30, 45 minutes before the ride, would have a big spike in glucose, get on the bike, and that insulin that was being used to bring the glucose down before activity gets supercharged with exercise. So then she had a really sharp crash, probably 15 minutes into her rides, and she would be shaky. She would feel low. She'd feel weak. And so what did she do? She began to, add peanut butter to her oatmeal, and then she adjusted the timing of when she ate to make sure that spike or that crash didn't happen at the start of activity. And she's like, this was the meal that I'd eaten. I'd done this throughout my entire, career, and had these feelings throughout my entire career. But once I had visibility, then I knew how to change. And then she's like, I started training better, went faster. So, a lot, what does a beer do to your glucose? I mean, I'm talking Australian. So, you can find, what beer does, what wine does, what everything does to your body. And, from a recovery standpoint, if your the stability is probably the most important thing. So, if your glucose goes below 70 milligrams per deciliter, the glycogen receptors in your muscles shut off. And so that impedes recovery. On the flip side, if your glucose goes above 140, then your body produces insulin to counteract that higher glucose and brings it down when you're not exercising. And that insulin creates inflammation, and that also impedes recovery. So for the athletes to figure out, the recovery right after training, And then the more stable you are throughout the day, the more stable, and through the night, the more stable you are during activity. And that stability is really one of the key focuses, or key targets for success. So just being able to make, most people don't need to make a lot of big adjustments. It's just a small adjustment here, a small adjustment there can have, percentage gains on performance. And more importantly, the precision needed on, race day where, or the weekend ride where, judgment is, the reality.
Judgment is the reality. And it's about trying to stay in what your team termed the glucose performance zone, stay in that sweet spot, if you like. And there's the trend arrow that is quite, I guess, a nice feature to visualize where people are sitting respectively to that performance zone, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's, what's the old adage in sport? Eat before you're hungry, drink before you're thirsty. Right. And so, I've been using this technology nonstop for 17 years, right? I've found one clinical trial or another to have continuous glucose monitoring, traveled to Europe to get supplies before they were released in the US I've had privilege in that regard. And, I look at it, because it was always in my pocket. I would look at it, 2-3 times per hour. And there were a lot of times I'd see my glucose at 150 and think I'm fine. And then I started thinking, I should check. And this is 30, 40 minutes later. And I pull it out and the arrow, it was 90 with an arrow going straight down. At which point I would have to eat 60, 80 grams of carbs to stabilize and get back in the performance zone. So when we hacked it way back when, and the first bike rides I was doing, with glucose in front of me on my Wahoo Bolt, thanks to Chip Hawkins, I'd see glucose at 150. And then, 5 minutes later at 148, think, okay, what's going on? And then the next 145, so it's starting to trend down. And then I'd eat. If I saw 2 data points in a row dropping, I would take on carbohydrates. And, or if the arrow goes just a nudge down, then immediately start eating. And I could just stay in the zone. And I joked with my, my coworkers and my training buddies on rides. I say, and this is last year, but I'm in better shape now riding 10 hours per week. And I'm faster now at riding 10 hours per week than when I was a professional doing 25 hours a week, just because my glucose was always where it needed to be. And that's powerful, to only ride 10 hours a week, but be incredibly strong because fueling appropriately. And the only kind of downside of Supersapiens is, I'm not getting any faster, but I see everyone else feeling better, and it's to my own demise, speeding up the rest of the peloton, especially on the weekend rides.
A bit like Chris Froome, Phil, if you only had it in your prime, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Phil, that's wonderful. And I guess just going back in before Supersapiens and the founding of it and your evolution of it, the glucose monitoring obviously was there for predominantly diabetic patients, right? As a life-saving device. My own mother's partner, he passed away with a diabetic low several years ago. So it's something that's close to the family.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. Like, I do hope the athlete community, as they use this and embrace the technologies, that they give credit to the diabetes population, because it's been people with diabetes who've been in clinical trials on this type of technology since the late 90s. It was 1999. I had a sensor inserted in my back, and then 3 days later, I went in my doctor's office to look at the results. And so there are tens of thousands, now millions of people with diabetes who use continuous glucose monitoring, to live their lives and live the best life possible. And it's because of those pioneers on the diabetes side, I include myself in that, the athletes of Team Novo Nordisk who've been racing with continuous glucose monitoring to pioneer hope and inspiration for people with diabetes, that this is now able to come to the sporting world. And so when you use it and you see something different and you see a person with diabetes with the sensor on your arm, ask them questions, because you never, they are the true experts in this. And it's amazing, I guess from where I sit, how similar we really are. Like once I started seeing data in mass, that what happens to me is exactly what happens to normal athletes. And we can learn from each other and optimize and go faster with each other.
Well, the collaborative approach, Phil, utilizing this energy management strategy, what are the the top 3 mistakes that you see people making? in getting started and integrating it into daily training and performance seeking?
I think the one mistake is that people, oftentimes think it's just you're going to put it on and go faster, that you don't have to do any work. This is not that tool. This is allowing you to be your own scientist. So when we look at, what are the three biggest learnings people have, I'd say is, number one, most of our consumers and most of our athletes eat more now during activity. And some of them 2 to 3 times as much as they used to eat from a carbohydrate intake. Second, the biggest change that people do is, I'd say when they eat before activity, because people finally see that glucose goes up, exercise, like I was telling with Anna Briggen, then glucose crashes down. So it's a, chain optimizing when you eat your last meal, the priming zone has been the biggest improvement for people. And then after in the recovery phases is just learning what to eat and when to eat it. And, the order of your foods, eating protein before carbohydrates will keep it more stable. So there's a lot of little ways to gamify, but, more carbohydrates is probably the biggest outcome for the broadest set of our population during activity.
That's really rich and powerful. 3 biggest learnings. 1, eat more during training and activity. 2, when athletes eat before they are active or they train, I should say. And 3, learning what to eat post activity to optimize recovery. And as a sports physiotherapist working in the endurance space with bone stress injuries, tendon related concerns, joint concerns, but particularly bone stress injuries, one of the biggest levers that we need to manipulate is the awareness of avoiding relative energy deficiency in sport, which has fortunately gained such recognition in the last several years and continues to do so. And I see this clinically as a potentially great tool for athletes that maybe have had a sequelae of bone stress injuries, and we're really trying to optimize their fueling to avoid, the risk of bone stress injuries, which can be heightened by 6-fold if an athlete is in a state of low energy availability.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's probably, that would explain, Kipchoge and the whole NN running team are now on product. Maybe that's one of the reasons the coaches got behind it. We've been working with, 25 or 30 female marathon runners who are in Nike's program, who've really embraced the technology. So, yeah, I mean, look, if we can help athletes prevent injuries, then they're going to achieve more of their goals. And that's so really interested to hear your thinking on that. And, what does the data say on low energy and increase in injury? I mean, this is for my own curiosity. You peaked.
Yeah, well, there's a clear link, particularly with more so the skeletal injuries, the bone injuries, Phil. There's papers that have shown that, if an athlete is in a state of low energy availability or relative energy deficiency in sport, and they compete in a leanness sport, i.e. the endurance sports, are undertaking more than 12 hours of activity a week, have a BMI less than 21, then they are 6-fold more likely to develop a bone stress injury. So I'm an athlete that's had a sequelae of femoral bone stress injuries, and I'm continuously trying to ensure I'm not underfueled. So I think I might be, I might be doing across the weekend, putting an order in, I think, Phil, and experimenting on the clinical side. But Phil, that's a good segue into how people get started. There's lots of data floating around now. I'm sure there's people that are thinking, I can see the benefits. I can see these athletes using it. But do I really need another data point to look at, manipulate? What would you say to that cohort, Phil?
If you're okay, being okay, then sure. But if you want to be the best of yourself and you want to be better, then this is one data point you wouldn't want to do without. I'll say that in hopes I don't get dropped this weekend.
If you're okay, being okay. No, I think that's powerful. Phil, is there anything that you feel you'd like to express to the coaching community specifically? Perhaps the coach that's been seeing other coaches and athletes integrate this and having great results. We've just watched Matthew Hauser, coached by Dan Atkins from Triathlon Australia, pick up the bronze medal in the Commonwealth Games triathlon. In Australia, Matthew's a bit of a shining light in the triathlon scene. So I'm sure there's coaches looking at the work of Dan Atkins and Matt and going, oh gosh, I wonder if we should start to look at utilizing this. Anything you'd say to the coaching community?
Yeah, I'd say just, reach out to us. It's our number one job as a company is education. And, we put on, Supersapiens University last year was a beta version. We've got a lot of, good learning tools specifically for coaches. So the earlier you want to get educated, we've got a great performance team who are coaches themselves, who just studied this data and learned how to use it to optimize. And so if someone's interested in, call it getting educated, we'd love to help. We've got a dashboard now so coaches can look at, 20 of their athletes in one place. And, we want to build our affiliate network of coaches to help kind of broaden the success stories from people using the technology. So reach out to us. We'd love to, get you or some of your athletes on board. If you're in the markets we're in, it's easy. If you're outside the markets, then we've got clinical trials we can put people on. But it is we're dependent upon the coaching community, and we learn as much from them as they do from us. And as I said earlier, we're all going faster together.
It's a win-win. Phil, thinking ahead 10 years, where do you see this technology being?
In 10 years, like if you think of, in the 90s, everyone had a heart rate monitor when they rode a bike. By the end of the 2000s, everyone had a power number, on their bike. And, in the next 5 to 10 years, then this is going to be the number, probably the most important data field on your bike computer or running watch when it comes to performance. So, we got a lot of work to do to get there, but that's the target we're striving for.
Yeah, powerful. Phil, every guest of the show is asked 2 set questions. One, if you could boil everything you've learned through your extensive athletic career, your extensive pioneering of this technology and integrate it into the world's best performing athletes, into one piece of advice to help listeners of this show perform at their physical best, what would that single piece of advice be, Phil?
Well, that's a tricky one to boil it all down, but I guess the simplest answer I can give is don't give up. If you believe you can, or you believe you can't, you're probably right. So believe in yourself and just don't quit.
Phil, powerful. Every guest of the show issues listeners with a physical challenge. So what is Phil Sutherland's physical challenge going to be?
Yeah, you're catching me when I just got on the trainer for the first time after breaking my collarbone end of June yesterday. I'd say do something that you haven't done before. Test yourself, and whether it's if you're running, go 1 kilometer longer than you've gone. If you're riding, then go 1 hour longer than you've gone before. But push yourself to your limit, and go get one friend active. Find one friend. I guess let me change my answer actually now, Brad. Find one of your friends who is not active, who does not exercise. Maybe they're overweight, and see if you can get them on a bicycle, and see if you can be the one that inspires their kind of personal being better journey. Because all it takes is a light switch to change someone's life. And if I know we've all got friends out there who need some encouragement, and if we can get one collectively amongst your community, Brad, get one new person active from each one of your listeners, then our community gets bigger and it gets stronger, and we uphold our responsibility to the world. Spreading
health, Phil. Beautiful. Phil, where can people find out more about Supersapiens and all the resources that you offer, including your podcast, which I've recently tuned into myself?
Thank you. So, we got a ton of info on supersapiens.com, our website. I'd encourage all the readers to go there, or listeners, excuse me. And then, if you want to learn a bit more about the Genesis story for Supersapiens, Team Novo Nordisk, we launched a documentary. It's on Outside Network. It's called Ride for Your Life. And, L1FE, Ride for Your Life. I encourage everyone to go have a view. It's free right now. And I think you can see really why we came to be.
Oh, powerful. We'll link all that up in the show notes. Phil Sutherland, thank you for your contribution to the show.
It's been a pleasure, Brad. And I wish you a great weekend and really enjoyed the time.
Thank you very much.